Hi, Cozy Hobby friends. I would love to take you along with me as I update my media journal. I just finished this book called The Ministry of Time, and before I forget what I just read, and while my thoughts about it are still fresh, I would like to write an entry about it in my media journal. Even though my calligraphy is not the best, I do like titling my review pages with this brush pen. I love those big, bold headings, and it helps me distinguish these review pages from other pages where I might just be taking notes on the book. And I can't wait to use this new Jinhao fountain pen to write this review. So far, I have only used it to write short entries, but let's see how it performs when writing a lot. I don't have a very strict layout of how I do these book reviews, but one thing I'm going to try to keep consistent between my reviews is adding a line for the author and leaving some space so that I can paste in a cover of the book. Here I am writing a summary of the book in my own words. There have been many studies that show that when you write something in your own words, it helps cement that concept in your mind. And because that was the main reason why I even started a media journal, so that I can remember what I read, this is an important part of my book reviews. I used to write my reviews in such a way so that I don't reveal any spoilers at the end, but I don't see why I wouldn't do that, especially since this is for me to look back on, and if I don't want to reread the entire book but still want to know what ended up happening, then why wouldn't I just spoil the ending for myself? Since I realized that I could do this, my book summaries are a little longer now. I actually kind of wish that I did this for all of my other reviews, but I think I should be okay if I am ever curious about what happens in a book because the rest of my review should be clear enough. I'll let you enjoy the rest of this section while I finish writing the book summary. Feel free to write along with me, and I'll meet you back at the next section. For this book, I had a very clear idea of how I wanted to lay out the review. There were things that I definitely liked and did not like about the book, so naturally, this review warranted a like versus dislike section. This is not always the case though, because sometimes I like to write stream of consciousness style. That usually happens when I just have so much to say and don't really have a way of organizing it. But like I said, in this case, I had very clear likes versus dislikes. So I am starting off by writing down what I liked about the book. At a high level, I liked the uniqueness in how this book approached time travel. It had certain rules about time travel, as time traveling books usually do. And I thought the ones in this book were quite unique. It was also kind of vague about how you can change history, but they kind of glossed over that because of this particular set of rules for time travel. I did sprinkle in a little bit of criticism in here because, as you know, the mind wanders, and one thing reminded me of another, but I saved my biggest criticisms for the following section. Here, I continue to write about the surprise twist and that I enjoy the ending. I feel like sometimes endings can be too satisfactory, just to make the reader happy, but isn't aligned with what the character would actually do. This is also a good time to talk about the characters that you like, what you like about them, and why do you like them. This is kind of one of my favorite parts about reading and writing book reviews on fiction because you get to judge imaginary characters. In this case, I wasn't a huge fan of the main female character, but I did write a little bit about how I liked the main male character. He was described as being a likable person though, so the author was successful in achieving that at least. Once again, I'll let you enjoy a little bit of quiet journaling time if you want to participate with me, and then I will catch up with you in the next section where I write about what I didn't like. Starting in this section, I write about the things that I didn't like in the book. Throughout the book, the main character made a lot of references about race, specifically about how she was half Cambodian, half white, and while I liked the observations that she made about being a minority in this world, I was really confused about what this had to do with the rest of the story. Because if you've read the story or heard anything about this book, it's described as a time travel romance, and there was very little discussed between the two main characters about their racial differences and how it impacted them in this modern era. So to me, that theme just felt so out of place. Like, I love a good racial commentary, especially being a minority myself, but with this being a time travel book, I would have really liked to have seen themes such as what shapes history? How do you get remembered throughout history? Exploring all the different potential conflicts and differences that two people from two different time periods end up falling in love with each other might experience, and the like. Honestly, I felt that this book was just trying to do too much at once. If it had narrowed down to a few themes and really dug in deep, then I don't think I would have had this criticism. But you know what? I am open to being wrong. Maybe I am completely missing something here, and if I am, feel free to correct me. Besides that, I didn't have any other major criticisms of this book, but in past reviews, I have definitely bashed on characters or talked about plot points that I thought didn't make sense or didn't like. It is completely up to you what you want to write about. Let's finish this section together, and I will meet you in the next, where I write down my favorite quotes from the book. Now, in this next section, I'm going to write down my top 3 favorite quotes from the book. I find that limiting myself to the top 3 is really helpful. Otherwise, for some books, I would just be copying down the entire book. Some quotes that I find really funny or have really interesting, beautiful language make it into my top 3, as this one did here. And I started writing below the quote the reason why I chose it as one of my top 3 favorites. In doing so, I have a much closer connection to that quote, and it helps me remember that quote more. Let's continue writing our favorite quotes together, and I will meet back with you for the finishing touches. Finally, I'm putting in the finishing touches for this review. This is a sticker of the book cover that I printed out. I love seeing all of the book covers laid out in my reviews. And I also printed out one of the maps that was inside of the book, thinking that I would actually refer to it while reading, but I didn't really do that, though it does add a nice visual to the review. And here is my final review. I hope you enjoyed journaling with me, and I'll talk to you next time.